What if everything you were told about your soil was wrong? What if the reason your fruit trees failed wasn't your fault, but the trees you chose? Let's imagine planting once and harvesting fruit for decades without fertilizers, without constant care, and without worrying about perfect soil. In this video, you're about to discover 8 incredible fruit trees that don't just survive in bad soil, they thrive in it. Some of these trees have been feeding families for thousands of years in conditions modern agriculture calls impossible. By the end, you might never look at your land the same way again. Most people believe that growing fruit requires perfect soil, expensive fertilizers, and constant maintenance, but history proves otherwise. Long before garden centers and soil testing kits existed, people were growing abundant fruit in conditions that today would be labeled as unusable. The truth is, many modern fruit tree failures come not from bad soil, but from planting the wrong species. Nurseries often sell trees that demand ideal conditions because those trees are profitable, not because they are practical. But across history, farmers, homesteaders, and entire civilizations relied on trees that adapted to harsh environments. These trees didn't need pampering. They didn't need chemical inputs. They survived floods, droughts, rocky terrain, and nutrient-poor soil. Once you understand this shift in mindset, choosing the right tree instead of fixing the soil, you unlock a completely different way of growing food. Your land doesn't need to change. Your approach does. Mulberry stands as one of the most forgiving and adaptable fruit trees you can grow. It thrives where others fail, whether the soil is heavy clay, loose sand, or lacking in nutrients entirely. This tree doesn't demand attention or constant care, making it ideal for beginners and experienced growers alike. Historically, mulberry trees were planted on homesteads, not just for their fruit, but because they were dependable. Even in extreme neglect, they continue to produce. The fruit itself is soft, sweet, and highly nutritious, yet rarely found in stores due to its delicate nature. That means growing it yourself is often the only way to enjoy it fresh. What makes mulberry truly powerful is its resilience. It tolerates drought, flooding, and poor soil without complaint. Once established, it becomes a long-term food source that produces year after year without intervention. If your land has defeated every other fruit tree you've tried, mulberry is often the one that finally succeeds. Fig trees completely challenge the idea that rich soil equals better results. In fact, figs often produce better fruit when grown in poor, rocky, or restricted conditions. Their natural habitat includes dry, stony hillsides where most plants would struggle to survive. When planted in overly fertile soil, fig trees tend to grow excessive leaves at the expense of fruit production. But when slightly stressed by limited nutrients or root space, they shift their energy toward producing sweeter, more concentrated fruit. This makes them uniquely suited for difficult environments. Another advantage is that many fig varieties are self-pollinating, meaning you only need one tree to get fruit. They are also relatively low maintenance once established. Their ability to grow in cracks, walls, and shallow soil makes them one of the best choices for rocky landowners. Instead of seeing poor soil as a limitation, fig trees turn it into an advantage. Pomegranate trees are built for survival in some of the harshest growing conditions imaginable. Originating from regions with dry climates and alkaline soils, they have adapted to environments that would quickly kill most fruit trees. What sets pomegranate apart is its ability to tolerate not just poor soil, but also salinity and drought. This means even if your soil has high mineral content or limited water retention, pomegranate can still thrive. The tree produces vibrant flowers before fruiting, adding beauty as well as function to your space. Beyond its resilience, the fruit itself is highly valued for its nutritional benefits, particularly its antioxidant content. Once established, pomegranate requires minimal watering and maintenance, making it ideal for low-effort growing systems. It can be pruned into a tree or left as a shrub, depending on your preference. For those dealing with dry, alkaline, or even slightly salty soil, pomegranate offers both survival and productivity. Jujube is one of the most underappreciated fruit trees, yet it may be one of the toughest. It thrives in conditions so poor that land restoration projects use it to bring life back to degraded soil. This tree tolerates extreme alkalinity, severe drought, and nutrient deficiency with ease. Once established, it often requires no irrigation at all. The fruit itself has a unique taste, often described as a mix between an apple and a date, and it can dry naturally on the tree for long-term storage. Another advantage is its resistance to pests and diseases, especially in regions where it is not commonly grown. This means fewer problems and less need for intervention. Jujube represents a shift toward truly low-maintenance agriculture. Plant it, let it establish, and it produces reliably with little to no input. If your soil seems too dry, too poor, or too difficult for anything else, jujube is often the solution. Pawpaw trees offer a completely different advantage by thriving in wet, poorly drained soils where most fruit trees fail. These trees naturally grow in forest understories, meaning they tolerate shade better than most fruit-bearing plants. This makes them ideal for areas that receive limited sunlight or have heavy clay that retains water. Instead of fighting these conditions, pawpaw embraces them. The fruit itself is unlike most temperate fruits, with a creamy texture and tropical flavor that surprises many first-time growers. Because it is native to certain regions, it has fewer pest and disease issues, making it easier to grow organically. Pawpaw does require cross-pollination, so planting more than one tree improves yields. For anyone struggling with soggy soil, poor drainage, or shaded areas, pawpaw transforms what seems like a disadvantage into a productive and unique food source. Elderberry is both a fast-growing fruit source and a valuable medicinal plant. It thrives in wet soil conditions, including areas that stay boggy or poorly drained for extended periods. Unlike many fruit trees that require years to produce, elderberry establishes quickly and begins yielding within a short time. It spreads naturally, forming dense hedges that can become highly productive over time. The berries themselves must be cooked before consumption, but they are widely used in syrups, teas, and health products. This dual-purpose nature, food and medicine, makes elderberry especially valuable. It also tolerates partial shade, allowing it to grow along edges and less ideal planting zones. Instead of trying to fix wet soil areas, elderberry allows you to use them productively. It turns neglected or problematic land into a source of both nutrition and income potential. Olive trees represent the ultimate example of long-term resilience and productivity. These trees have been cultivated for thousands of years, often in conditions that appear almost lifeless. Rocky, dry, nutrient-poor soils are not a problem for olives. They are ideal. In fact, like figs, olives tend to produce better fruit when grown under slightly stressful conditions. Rich soil leads to excessive growth, while poor soil encourages fruiting. Olive trees are also incredibly long-lived, with some continuing to produce for centuries. Once established, they require minimal watering and care, making them perfect for low-maintenance systems. Modern varieties have even expanded their growing range into cooler climates, increasing accessibility. Beyond fruit, olives provide oil, which has both culinary and economic value. For anyone dealing with rocky, dry, or drought-prone land, olive trees are not just an option. They're one of the best long-term investments you can make. The truth is simple. Your soil is not the problem. The problem is choosing plants that were never meant to grow there. These trees have survived for centuries, even millennia, in conditions far worse than what most people call bad soil. Instead of fighting your land, work with it. Choose trees that already thrive in your conditions, plant them once, and let nature do the rest. If this opened your eyes to what's really possible, make sure to subscribe and tell me, what kind of soil are you dealing with?